All right, here's an interesting little weird game. This guy played against me. So just playing, standard perk defense. This guy's like, I'm going to go berserk for some reason. Okay. Now, this is not a known gambit. This is just a mistake. The difference is a gambit has some science behind it, and you're offering the pawn, usually, for some compensation. That's not compensation. That's a gift. So it would be rude of us to refuse a gift. So we accept his gift. And accepting his gift, we return back home, pocketing the prize. No problem, because he's not really gained anything by his gift. G4. Now there's a good idea. And I mean good, in quotations. So, I'm not into gambit necessarily. Again, this is not a gambit. This is just either desperation or wackiness. Or he just made another mistake. I'm going to take this and develop a piece. That's what you're supposed to do. We're concentrating on solid development fundamentally to be a good chess player. So we take the e-pawn because it's not a real threat. He hasn't really gained compensation for the pawn. Even partial compensation is something. He's got none of that. He gives us a second pawn on g4. Well, bishop takes g4, and I'm going to take that. I don't care how good this guy is. Well, good luck with that. Well, now, what you see is he has one piece developed. So let's challenge his only piece. So rather than retreating to d7, which would be okay, I'm going to go to g6. I'm not going to play a perk defense and put the bishop on g7. I'm going to put that white bishop on g6, castle kingside, and dare him to attack me. If that's where he wants to do. Hey, buddy, you can move your chump of a bishop. Or not, I'll just take it. It doesn't matter. If he moves it, then he gets off his only diagonal that's worthwhile. The white squared bishop's diagonals that he usually will do something on. Long diagonal is one of them. d3 to h7 is one. c4 to f7 is another. Number 4 would be e2 to h5. And that one's blocked by a pawn, so to his bishop. So we've pocketed 2 pawns. Every move we've made has had a real fundamental purpose. He's just given away 2 pawns for no compensation. We have the same number of developed pieces. He's got nothing for this so-called gambit. Okay, now I'm going to develop another piece. By taking with the h-pawn, my rook is now developed. It gets worse for him. It's not getting better. Objectively, trading bishop takes g6 is a mistake. Strategically, because you're just making this game easier for black. The bishops are gone. The rook is now developed. So white has gambited, and I say gambit in quotations. He's given away 2 pawns for absolutely negative compensation. He doesn't have 0 compensation. Black has got compensation now. Black is 2 pawns ahead with an extra developed piece, complete flexibility. White is in bad trouble, and after what, 10 moves? Maybe it's like 15 moves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7? Okay. 8 moves, okay. Well, 10 was a good guess. Anyway. Ooh, that's the move I was afraid of, was bishop to e3. You'll notice the black squared bishop cannot make a threat. The best he can do is attack a granite wall at d6, go to g5, attacking another granite piece, this knight on f6. His knight cannot go to its best square. White's idea has been a complete and total failure. Strategically, he's just doing nothing. Hey, d5, I dare you. Play d5, I dare you. I'll go knight to e5. Just, messing with him. Oh, that's it. He's got me now. Oh, wait a second. He doesn't. Now, normally, you don't really want to play b6 in this type of thing when the queen goes to b3, because I have Swiss cheese on the white squares. Too bad for him. He doesn't have a white squared bishop. So, that's the reason. This is the exception to the rule. b6 is played because he does not have a white squared bishop. And it's just really annoying. I dare him to play queen to b5. I'll play queen to d7. It's not cool. He's just got a terrible position, and it's not getting better. Hooray, he castled. Which is a good move. I mean, let's just be honest. That's the best move he could play. There's queen to d7, just like I promised you. That's also wise, although queen to f5 check is like, well, but I'm not interested in a stupid check. Don't be dumb. Get your business taken care of before you go crazy. Hey, I'm already 2 pawns up. I don't need to go look for more pawns. I'm not worried about that. Objectively speaking, this isn't the greatest move, but it's good enough. He should play queen to b5, and I'd have to play queen back to d7. But that's okay. He has nothing. Aha, I've got a pawn fork. I'm going to get a piece. Well, surely you see that that's not true. This seems like, pretty basic stuff. The queen needs to get out of dodge. Now, granted, you got to look at this and say, okay, d5 is a better move here because his king was moved to b8. That was a smart move. He knew that king would be vulnerable on the dark squares. And it would be. Because, man, I'm taking that bishop. That's forced. I don't have a choice. If I don't take his bishop, I lose my knight. Irrevocably. So, okay. He's opening lines and whatever. It's like, that's fine. New problems. So, the job for black has been pretty simple. Just get your guys out in good developmental position. There's no real threats happening. Maybe objectively e6 is a little better. Tomato, it doesn't matter. It actually turned out to be better for me because he did something really dumb. He's like, haha, I got you. I got a, oh man. He's got a, knight c7 check threat that I have to deal with this queen and this. So it's like, this is a tempting move at first sight, and he played it really pretty fast. Hey, I just take your queen, bro. The reality is, there's nothing he can do that's worthwhile. Knight captures knight, does nothing, do the in-between check. Knight takes c7, check, does nothing, because king to d8, and I'm going to pocket a free knight after he takes my queen. So the idea that he had of knight to d5 to exploit my queen, hey, he was losing badly anyway. So it's not a knight to d5 isn't a horrible move in the context of he's already losing. At least there's a trap that he's setting. So you've got to say that if you're in this bad position, and it was a bad position, playing knight to d5 doesn't make you lose any, it only loses if he plays correctly. You're already losing. So when you're losing, There's nothing wrong with taking a wild chance. Well, what are you going to lose? Lose? You already are losing. So logically, knight to d5 was his only shot. You know, his d5 pawn fork was a good idea. Unfortunately for him, it didn't work out. But he, you know, you got to look at from his perspective that he was already lost, essentially. And when you're in a bad, losing, lost position, mix it up. Try to create chances. If they fail, you were going to lose anyway. You didn't lose anything. If they succeed 1 out of 10 times, well, that's a victory that you got that you shouldn't have gotten, and you know, congratulations, that was clever. So, I'm not here to say this guy was going insane at the end. His insanity started early. He played some clever moves that just didn't work out because, and here's an important lesson, this works for your entire life. The difference between being clever and being smart is that clever is a temporary scenario or temporary status. Smart is forever. So when you think of great players, you don't think of Bobby Fischer or Garry Kasparov and say that they're clever players. They weren't clever. They were just super smart. And that's the difference. Because they're smart all day long. Clever is a temporary status that disappears quickly and usually clever does not generally beat smart. Smart implies preparation. You know, clever is like, okay, you know, it's a trap or whatever, that's fine. But smart is all day, every day. And that's why I said, when you look at, you know, the great players that you see, Magnus, you know, and Hikaru, those guys are not clever players. They're really smart. That's the difference. Knight captures knight. His game is just completely in tatters. He's got nothing. This pawn structure is just ironclad and winning. This is F4 is a beautiful square for this black squared bishop, okay? Just so you see. I'm going there. He's in trouble. He's got essentially, now technically this is one pawn island, but temporarily it's two. That's one group, two groups, three, four groups. Now he can make this group better with eventually with b5. Okay. Now sort of. I'm just gonna, this is a fixed weakness. There's nothing you can do. This pawn doesn't exist. For all practical purposes in this game, he's 3 pawns down. This pawn is backwards and worthless. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to my 8. Now this pawn is backwards and doubled as well, like this one, but it's potentially more valuable. This one is really, when at some point he gets to b5, I'm going to play a6 and chop it off. And then this will be a little bit better, okay? That's not a problem. So if you want to say this is okay because he's going to exchange this pawn off for this one, well, that's true, okay? But for the majority of whatever's left of this game, this pawn will do almost nothing. And it becomes a weakness if we get to an endgame. A bad weakness. Well, you know, whatever. Same thing, this one's doing nothing. Doesn't have much prospects until I can go and exchange off this F pawn, which is a weakness, but it fixes that. So, you know, we need to be fair in evaluations. The worst thing you can do is to be one of these guys that everything I do is good and everything you do is bad, you're going to lose a lot of games. Black's position is good. Now that this bishop is objectively bad. Quotations bad in chess, because look all the black pawns on the black squares. That's acceptable in this situation simply because we're going to get a terrific diagonal for this bishop. And we neutralized a crazy attack with a 2-pawn advantage. So, I'll take the semi-bad or bad bishop with a 2-pawn edge. Because with my endgame skill, I'm going to crunch this guy. So you have to be objective that his pawns are bad because weak, temporary island. He's got a lot of pawn weaknesses. Well, I have a big pawn weakness with my pawns being on the color of my bishop. So we have to be objective. And if it's bad for the opponent to have a bishop blockaded by pawns, it's a bad thing for me to have it. Now, this is, like I said, this is an exception position where this is not as bad as it could be. Now, if I played f6, this is going to be hideous, okay? That's just hideous. So there's a potential to be really stupid to play f6. Then this guy's blocked in with, you know, prospects of escaping are not good. So we need to be objective. If it's bad for him to have that scenario, then it's bad for me to have it. If it's good for me to have a certain scenario, well, then it's good if my opponent has it. So we don't want to be subjective and saying, well, that's bad if you have it, but if I have it, it's good. That's just stupid. And that prevents you from being a good player. Everything I do is good, everything you do is bad. Well, clearly that's not possibly true in a logical sense. So don't be full of yourself, because that's what it is. It's narcissism. The narcissistic chess player doesn't usually do too well. Okay, so, whoops. Went too far. Anyway, knight to e2, the best move possible for him. He got to get that knight off the back rank. My bishop is heading to the super diagonal. Well, it's normally not a super diagonal, but in this case, it's pretty good. Okay? It's the best I can get for any time being, so that's fine. At least when he's on bishop is on f4, he's not a complete worthless bum. He's still not a superstar, but, you know, we got to work on these things one thing at a time. Okay, he's going to try and take it. Yeah, whatever. Bishop f4 is a very good outpost for the bishop. It restricts that knight, because I'd love to trade this bishop for this knight. This knight is on a pretty good square. The problem is I can play f5 and he's bumped, you know, summarily. So it's a pretty good square. It's not as good as the bishop square. That f4 is much better. But this is, you know, not going his way. He made a mistake in that one. He didn't anticipate what was going to happen on the H file. And so this game is over quickly. That pawn is toast. 3 pawns, there's no recovery. His position wasn't that good to begin with. You know, and I would even allow the exchange of the bishop for a knight and let him win a pawn doing it, just to get rid of it, because I'm going to win a 3rd pawn and go back to a 2-pawn deficit after he wins the pawn exchanging my bishop, because it's helping me win. I'm going to eat that H pawn, and there's nothing he could do about it. He just, you know, he realized that this was complete toast, and he just resigned. There's just nothing he could do. Knight to e2. Well, whoopity-doo. If he plays knight to e2, here's what would happen. Chop. Taking would be a bad mistake. Oops, sorry. That's not where I wanted to go. This would be a better move. it's terrible. If he ever takes this, he's just destroyed. I mean, what can you say? It's not good. So the important part of this game was just to see how the difference is between a Gambit versus just crazy material gifts that you can take and go back, which is what happened. So hopefully you enjoyed this and learned some stuff from it, because there's some good lessons here. You guys know what to do. I'll talk to you later.